Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. My name is Dr. Drum McNaughton, and I'm the CEO of The Change Leader, a management consultancy that helps university leaders create sustainable higher ed institutions through holistic approaches to strategic management, university academics and operations, change management, leadership, and governance. Our podcast brings you the latest in higher ed news, as well as some of the top experts in our profession who will share with you their perspectives on how you can grow your institution. Dr. Judy Kjelstrom, also known as Dr. Judy, is the Director Emerita of the UC Davis Biotechnology program and a professor of molecular and cellular biology. Dr. Judy spent over 12 years as a clinical laboratory science at the Davis Medical Center. But what makes her unique, and the reason we wanted to have her on the podcast today, is that from 2004 to 2018, she directed Davis's Biotechnology program, which is a novel program that partners effectively across the campus and with the life sciences industry to educate PhDs for careers in research, both in the R1 institutions and in the biotech industry. Although the program is relatively small in number of personnel, it's involved in a large number of cross-disciplinary projects and has distinguished itself through the over 250 PhD students who have completed paid 3 to 6 month internships with companies who make up the who's who of biotech, including Genentech, Novozymes, Monsanto, and IBM. Dr. Judy's given us a great example on how to build cross-discipline programs that work for both the student and the institution, and we're here to have her talk about that today. Judy, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, I'm just delighted to be part of this, Drum. I love to share our successes at UC Davis in higher education.
Well, you've got so many of them. I think you just won a major award there last month, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. I retired in July 1st after 20 years, and the icing on the cake was that I was awarded the James H. Meyer Award for Distinguished Lifetime Achievement. So that's one of the highest honors that UC Davis gives. And it really was for all of this innovative work that we have done to connect our graduate level science programs with the biotechnology industry. And it's been 20 years to be an overnight success, I guess. But we're very proud of what we've accomplished, and it's nice to get these awards.
You know, it really is nice to see all that you've done. The awards are just kind of the icing of the cake. But having spoken with you before, I know that award isn't about you. It's really about the students and what the whole team has been able to accomplish.
Exactly. I'm always just the one that gets noticed, but we couldn't do this without dedicated students and dedicated faculty and administrators at UC Davis. As I always say, it takes a village to raise a child. And to do these things, you need to have somebody that kind of has the captain of the ship. But if you don't have your crew, you don't get anywhere. So all of these accolades go to the visionaries at UC Davis that bought into the idea that you could get out of your ivory towers of each discipline and actually work together to solve big problems in infectious disease or cancer or stem cell technology or global warming. This is the 21st century type of science. It's big science and it's team science.
Tell us a little bit more about the team science, if you would. It's something that most institutions are not doing, but as we go forward, it requires such high levels of complexity, such high levels of intellect and understanding. No one person can do it all.
No, that's if you look at most scientific papers now, it's multiple authors, and they're from very different disciplines. And we were saying that back in the late 1980s, because we saw biotechnology growing in the Bay Area. And biotechnology is not a single discipline. It's engineering, and it's cell biology, it's microbiology, and then there's the business part of it. So the visionaries at UC Davis said, we need to create a special program that could be layered onto a student's PhD in which they have that deep and narrow expertise, but we need to add a second layer of where they come together and they cross-fertilize across engineering and chemistry and biology and even the business side of the house of seeing the big picture of what's going on in biotech.
Well, that's a huge sea change from what it used to be. How did you get the faculty to buy into a program this ambitious?
Yeah, it took a few years. This designated emphasis in biotechnology was approved in 1997, and I was brought in to kind of head up the day-to-day operations of this graduate program in 1999. I inherited 10 students from probably 4 different disciplines. I think there was molecular biology, biochemistry, plant biology, and chem engineering. And it took quite a bit of effort to even convince the students to sign up for extra work. And this extra work included 3 to 6 months in a bio before they graduated. So it was a challenge to get them to, leave the lab and go on this paid internship. And then the professors were kind of reluctant to let them go. But once we got a few to go and come back, the professors finally said, this is really cool. Our students actually are coming back with much more professionalism. They understand team science. They work faster. They're on a mission to finish because some of them that were getting job offers from the companies they internshipped. And so they wanted to come back and quickly finish. And so little by little, we had buy-in from both the student population as well as the professors. And then we also got a biotechnology training grant from NIH. So we were able to fund 10 students per year. And so then the professors really loved it when they didn't have to pay the student off their research grants. But word of mouth, I think, was the biggest thing. The students that were completing the program talked to the incoming first years and really said, you've got to join the DEB. This is like the time of your life if you do this.
DEB?
So yeah, the Designated Emphasis in Biotechnology Graduate Program. And it's a mouthful, so we just call it the DEB. We went from having 10 students in 2000, and when I retired, I think the count was 240 students from 29 different disciplines.
Wow.
So going from 10 students from 4 to 5 disciplines. So in less than a 20-year period, I wish I was the CEO of a startup that had this kind of growth. I think I would be very successful.
Well, I think you've been very successful anyway, trying to spread a concept like this, within your own faculty, let alone multiple departments. That's a pretty good feat of change management.
Yeah, actually, I think I used to say I didn't have the ability to be a salesperson. That's why I went into science. But what I found is when you believe in something, you can sell it. And when I saw this program, because I had spent 12 years in the hospital as a clinical laboratory scientist before I went back to school to get my doctorate. So I didn't get my doctorate till I was 42. And I wanted to really do something impactful on translational medicine. And there wasn't anything for me when I went through grad school. And when I saw this, I said, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I wish I would have had. So it was easy to sell it because, again, I had worked outside of the university. I saw the types of skills that students really needed to acquire in addition to all of their research. You need to have what I call a high level of social and emotional intelligence and also leadership ability if you're really going to make an impact in biotech.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's neat to hear you say that type of thing, especially when you've got, so many faculty, tenured faculty who are, or at least were a little reticent to change. Dangling money, of course, always helps, doesn't it?
Well, all you have to do is, if you're a fuller brush person, if you can just get your foot in the door and say, just give me 5 minutes of your time, I'll tell you why we're doing this. And that's what the faculty allowed me to talk to them. And again, the students really became part of my sales force because the students loved it. And I think when the students are excited about what they're doing, it bleeds into their research. You know, they're happy when they're coming into the lab. They're seeing how their work may relate to the real world. So it just raised the bar because a lot of graduate students, they get rather depressed in the final stages of their PhD because they're not sure where it's going.
And of course, you had to build strong relationships with the tech community around UC Davis and down in the Bay Area. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, you know, I think most of the biotech companies that were in the Davis area, as well as even the Bay Area, they knew the reputation of UC Davis as being a stellar university for biomedical research and plant biotechnology. So what I call the competence piece, that technical piece, they knew that our students were good in the academics, but where we listened to them about what are they missing, and we asked them, we checked our egos, and we said, so where is it that we're not doing as good a job? And they said, well, your students don't know anything about patents. Your students don't know anything about working in a team. And some of your students don't know how to really communicate effectively within that team. So if you could kind of work on some of these aspects, it would just take you a huge light year amount where we're going to want to hire your students if they have these other skill sets on top of their fine publication record. So, you know, you have to have the competence piece to do this. I never say you have to shortchange your research.
It makes perfect sense. And what I've been seeing, for example, one of our recent guests was Dr. Dan Pugh from Texas A&M. And they have a mantra there at Texas A&M. What do you call an Aggie 5 years after he or she graduates? Boss. It's because they put them into leader. First off, they retain the vision of what education is supposed to be. It's supposed to prepare people for the job market, but it's also supposed to prepare them for life. They also put them in leadership situations as students. And when a problem comes up, it's not run to the faculty member or, whoever's running a thing. You run to your student who is the leader of the program. And, how are you going to deal with this? So they're getting direct leadership experience right in the program. You're doing something very similar to that with your internship programs, as well as giving the students both the emotional intelligence and the leadership experience and the business experience to be successful when they graduate.
Yes. What came out of our program just a few years ago, I think it was when Sheryl Sandberg wrote Lean In, and some of my women students said, do you know that it's not equal out there, Dr. Judy, that I don't have the same ability to become a CEO of a biotech company? And it was amazing that our young women actually did not understand the women's movement of the 60s. They thought everything was equal playing field. So we started to explore that, and they came up with a student-run organization called ESTEAM, Equity in STEM and Entrepreneurship, in which it's all student-run. They have guest panels from industry, men and women and men of color, talk about the challenges of how do we address diversity issues, because we know that diverse teams are much more creative than, a team that everybody looks the same. So we're really proud of our students that they have learned leadership skills through this organization, and they even know how to do fundraising, because I tell them it takes money to buy pizza and lemonade if you're going to have an evening event. So they go out to the deans and they do their own fundraising, and I think that's good for them.
I think that's fabulous. I know when I sit on boards, I frequently chair the Nominations and Governance Committee, and one of the things that we look for is diversity of race, of gender, all those type of things, because we find that when you have that diversity, people think differently and it makes for a far better output.
Yeah, I mean, the data is in. We know diverse teams are, well, if you're a biotech company, you're going to have a better bottom line if you start creating more diversity in your organization. And that's also if you look at the diversity at the top of your organization. And I want to position my students to the point where when they're looking for a strong woman leader or a man of color to be in the management team, they're going to look at our students that came out of the DEB program because they're learning how to do that right now.
How did you get the students buy-in for this? I know you talked about sending them out on internships initially. That must have been a tough nut to crack initially.
Yes and no. I think the students that joined the very beginning, they were curious about the biotechnology industry. They were hearing, from their professors back in the 90s that, when you got a PhD in STEM, you became a professor. And there were some of the students that were questioning whether they wanted to be a professor, but they had no other option until our program came along. And so they were curious about what was on the other side of the mountain. And these were paid internships. They pay very well at Genentech, a lot more than the student's TA-ship. So when they saw how much the internship was paying, they go, oh, I think I could make that over the summer. And especially if a professor had run out of grant money to pay them during the summer, some of the professors said, hey, do you think you could place my student in an internship this summer because I don't have any money? So it was just very interesting on how it was a very circuitous route. It was not a direct line.
And change rarely is. I'm just totally impressed with what you guys have been able to do. If you had 3 things that you would advise our listeners on how to establish a program like this, what would they be?
Well, if you're a university that is near a center, I know technology, so we have lots of biotech companies. So if your university is within a 100-mile radius, get to know the stakeholders in your region. Find out, how you can partner because, the growth of the biotechnology industry, they're starting to worry if they can fill all the open positions. They're growing so fast here in Northern California. So they want to partner with the university. So I think if the university president, vice president of research goes out and physically visits these companies or brings the companies to the campus and shows them the campus, it's funny how it's you break that inertia and good things happen. And it's a win-win proposition. So again, it's just getting out of the ivory tower and getting out among the people. And don't use your PhD title. Just go, people to people. What is it that we need to be successful on both sides? And one of the things that faculty sometimes used to ask me, because I knew so many companies, they go, oh, we need some extra money. Just go out and ask the company for money. And one thing I learned over the years is people don't give you money. You have to show a value proposition, and you build a relationship first, and you don't ask for anything. And then later on, when both sides are getting their needs met, then sometimes there's endowments and nice things that happen, but you can't lead with that.
It's all about building the relationship.
Yes, I think that's my central theme. Just start with building a trust, honest relationship with another human being, and then say, what can we do for one another if we're sharing a vision? And each side, whether it's the industry or the university, what's the common thing here? It's the students. The students are the eventual workforce for the industry. And so if we are student-centered and that all students are valued, so women and underrepresented minorities, that they're all valued members of our team, I think good things happen.
I think you're absolutely right. So what I heard was stakeholders, got your stakeholders on board, very critical, build a relationship with people to be able to move forward and have a shared vision around where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly right.
Well, what's next for Dr. Judy?
Well, I tried to retire, and the Graduate School of Management Dean, Dean Unava, said, "Oh, no, you don't." He said, "You've done such a good job of bringing all these PhD students in STEM together." He says, "We're jealous over here at the Graduate School of Management. We want the MBA students to be part of these teams." So last winter, we tried a pilot class called Biotechnology Industry Immersion Class, where I invited my friends from the biotechnology industry to be case presenters. Then they would present a 3-hour case study on an issue, and we would have teams of students, one MBA student, a PhD life scientist student, and a PhD engineering student in a team, and they would try to solve this case study, some problem that they were having at their company. And then they had to present it in the last hour of how their solution would come to pass. And the students loved it. Our industry partners loved it. And so the dean asked me to come back each winter and teach this 5-week course. So I said, I think that would be fun. So I'm going to continue to do this, is that next stage of bringing the scientists and engineers together with the business folks. And maybe we'll get a startup coming out of these teams. Who knows?
That would be fabulous. Who'd have thunk that this young girl, going out into industry and then going back and getting her PhD would ultimately be an entrepreneur?
I actually laughed about this a couple of years ago. I got an award from the Sacramento Business Journal, Women Who Mean Business. And I laughed. I said, "I'm not a businesswoman." And they said, "Oh, yes, you are." So I really think if you really want to change the world as a scientist, you're going to have to throw some business acumen into the mix, because at the end of the day, it's all about business, of moving ideas from the research bench to the bedside. So yes, I am a businesswoman. And if I was younger, I probably would be a startup entrepreneur, but I'm getting a little long in the tooth, so now I'm just going to mentor younger entrepreneurs.
And that can be a lot more fun, and you'll keep more of your hair.
Yeah, well, I'm Portuguese, so I don't think I have to lose my hair like my fellow colleagues. My mother is 99 and still has a full head of hair.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, so that's why I think I've got still a few good years left, because my mom's going to be 100 this upcoming year.
Well, that's a fabulous achievement. My mother-in-law lived to 104, and right up until about 2 months before she passed, she was sharp as a tack.
Well, I think when you do what you love and you love people, I think that's kind of part of the secret to having a long life. I still am excited about getting up in the morning. There's always things to do. And on top of this, we're building a science center on the banks of the Sacramento River here in Sacramento. And I'm the chair of the education committee. And we'll have the doors open in 2020. And we want to instill the love of science and technology in all of the children of the Valley. And hopefully we can recruit some students to go down to Davis and continue to join our DEB someday.
I'm sure you will be. Well, Dr. Judy, it has been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. We'll do this again. Thanks for listening this week, and a special thank you to this week's special guest, Dr. Judy Kjelstrom of UC Davis, on how to build cross-discipline programs that work for the student in the institution. Our next guest is Russ Poulin, the Senior Director of Policy, Analysis, and Strategic Alliances for WCET. Russ's responsibilities include organizing WCET's national policy and research activities, coordinating WCET's research efforts, and working on e-learning consortia issues. He was recently named to the 2019 NEGREG process back in Washington that will be looking at accreditation and innovation. including distance learning. If you like this podcast, please take a minute to subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, would you please take a moment to give us a rating and review? You can find out more information and show notes at changinghighered.com. And if you have guests and/or other topics you'd like to hear about, please email us at podcast@changinghighered.com to let us know. Remember, creating sustainable higher ed institutions requires three things: taking a holistic view of your institution, aligning strategies, structures, and processes, and ensuring stakeholders are attuned to where you're going. Without any of those three things, you won't get your institution where you want it to go. Until next time.